What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another free agent profile, and today we are taking a look at a former Detroit Lion. There has been some buzz about this free agent this offseason because of his connection with the Detroit Lions, and it was not a great way that it seemed to end, and now it looks like there's potential that he could be back in Detroit. There are no rumors about this, from my understanding, but he could be a landing spot for the Detroit Lions. This is a position of need, so let's get it started.
The city's been down, and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take two more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here, and we are back to talk about another possible free agent target for the Detroit Lions this offseason. And today we are taking a look at a player that has a big connection with the Detroit Lions in the past. Now, free agency, it's about here. It's about that time where you get an opportunity to sign some unrestricted free agents. I mean, the Lions have started making moves, signing guys like Josh Reynolds, 2 restricted free agents. Many exclusive rights free agents have been tendered. So now it's getting close to that opportunity to start signing these unrestricted free agents. And as Brad Holmes calls it, the player acquisition phase. Could this player be a part of that? Maybe, because it is a position of need. To break this down just like we did the Allen Robinson video, we're going to talk about some different categories. What's the player good at? What's he not good at? Would he fit the Lions? Talk about his projected contract and whether or not we think the Detroit Lions will be interested in this player, or should they be interested in this player. So let's do a quick little background. Today we're talking about safety Quandre Diggs from the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I'm sure most of us know about Quandre Diggs. He was with the Detroit Lions. He started his career with the Detroit Lions out of Texas. He was a mid-round pick back in 2015. Came out as an undersized cornerback, transitioned to the safety position, and then he was traded away to the Seattle Seahawks. I want to go back a little bit and talk about the trade and when it happened, because I think now when you look back at it, you can kind of see maybe why the trade did happen schematically, kind of being able to see everything that happened in the past and how it kind of played its way out. Now, yes, there could have been off the field things that also were part of this trade. It may not have just been specifically football, but I don't want to dive into that because first off, I don't know. And secondly, I just don't feel like diving into it. It was years ago. I moved on. We're on to other things now. But specifically with the football side of things, you can kind of understand why this kind of trade did happen. So you go back to the middle of the 2019 season. Actually, before that, let's go back to 2018. It was the first year with Matt Patricia as Lions head coach. He did not draft Quandre Diggs, so you got to keep that in mind. But he came in with a different defensive scheme, right? We know that he played a lot of single high coverage, but it was a very man-heavy coverage defense. That's what it was. There was a lot of man coverage defensively. So you have to keep that in mind because it is different than what the Seattle Seahawks do. We know the Seattle Seahawks with Pete Carroll are a very heavy cover 3 defensively, which still means single high safety, but it is different in terms of responsibilities. When you're playing a cover 1 defense, you have a lot more field to potentially cover as safety versus playing a cover 3 defensively. You're just playing the middle deep third. So there is that to keep in mind. In 2018, we had Glover Quinn, we had Quandre Diggs at the safety position for the Lions. Those two guys kind of started. It was kind of a weird fit for a guy like Quandre Diggs, and we'll talk about why when we dive into this. But you move to the next season, 2019. 2018 was the final year for Glover Quinn. The Detroit Lions have guys like Tracy Walker now on the roster. So you go to 2019, and this is when the trade went down. It's not a huge return for the Detroit Lions in terms of draft picks that they got back for a guy that was pretty productive statistically for the Lions. Now, there was some issues at the time, one being that he has missed some time with some injuries. Also, you throw on top of that he also did have a missed tackle issue with the Detroit Lions. He was missing a lot of tackles, and for Patricia's defense, for the defense that he played, you had to either be able to cover a lot of field, you had to have a ton of range to be that deep safety, or you usually had to be able to come down to the box, help against the run, but also be able to play man coverage. And it kind of left Quandre Diggs in a weird spot, honestly, looking back on it, because neither of those two things really played to his strengths. However, with Seattle, it really fit what he did well. So while the trade compensation wasn't great, it did work out really well for the Seattle Seahawks. But what the Lions got in return from that trade ultimately turned into the offseason, 2020's offseason, or heading into the 2020 season. The Detroit Lions traded for safety Duron Harmon, right? The closer. Now, Duron Harmon did fit a little bit better what Matt Patricia's vision was schematically. Now, unfortunately, he didn't really just adapt to what we had, which probably would have been the better option. He kind of just went with his defense, so he had to have a lot of change on the roster, right? We saw that. So you bring in Duron Harmon. Now, Duron Harmon fit better kind of the idea of the free safety, deep safety role in his defense because he had a lot of range and he did it back with New England Patriots. He had some interceptions doing that, so it fit better. He was also a much more conservative tackler. He didn't miss as many tackles as Quandre Diggs was. He was a very aggressive player. but yet it fit Duron Harmon. Now, this is when we started to get into the struggles of the Tracy Walkers and the Will Harris, because we were asking these guys to try to play in the box. We were asking a guy like Tracy Walker to try to be a box safety, which he's not. That's not what he's best at. We've seen that. He played much better last season because he wasn't a pure box safety, meaning that you would either be tasked with playing man coverage, sitting in the box, having to sometimes take on blockers and help versus the run. That's not what Tracy Walker is built for. He's much better in a split coverage look where he can play in a two-shell defense and work his way downhill or drop back into coverage. Constantly putting in the box was not good for him, which ultimately leads me to believe that's why the Lions ended up getting a guy like Jaron Kearse, who could cover tight ends much better than Tracy Walker could, because now he could play kind of that role. Much later after that, the Detroit Lions ended up firing Matt Patricia, so we moved on to this new regime, which is right now. But that's kind of how I look at the moves that were made and why they were made, and it makes sense schematically what happened. The better option there would have probably been trying to fit to your talent rather than kind of go with your scheme that you did with the New England Patriots and try to carry that over, because we didn't have the same fits for that style. But that's in the past. We're moving on. Let's talk about what he's done with the Seattle Seahawks. So he moves to Seattle, and Seahawks run this heavy cover three. Now, it's not like every single play they run cover three, because if you did that, you'd be absolutely destroyed in the NFL. You just can't do that. All right, teams know how to defeat that. You can't run that every play. You can show it, but you can't run it every play. So we did see some, two shell looks in there. We did see some cover two mixed in. We saw some man coverage mixed in. They did mix in a lot of different things defensively, but their base is a cover three defense. And that's where Quandre Diggs slotted in, because it was kind of a weird projection coming out of the draft. We know he was a very aggressive physical player, but he was undersized, didn't have the long speed. He ran a 4.56 coming out, which isn't all of it, but didn't have the great range for a single high cover one safety. So I was like, where do we put this guy? Seattle figured it out. They had him play cover three, deep middle safety, and it fit his strength. This is a highly intelligent, instinctual player that was able to read on things. So now he was able to play in the back end, but he had a little bit less field to cover usually. He could obviously play in cover two, things like that when he played in a two-shell defense, because now he's only responsible for half the field, so he could do that. But it also allowed him, to me, to be a little bit more aggressive as a safety. Now, he has improved since that time in terms of missed tackles. We'll get to that, but it allowed him to really play to his strengths as a player, and the production has taken off, and we see what it is now, which could lead to a pretty big payday even at 29 years old. So the question is, what does he do well? What does he not do well? And does this make sense for the Detroit Lions? I thought that kind of set the stage well, but now let's just dive into it. Let's talk about his athleticism. First off, as an athlete, what you notice is, coming out here in a 4.56 40, which was not great, and that's part of the reason that cover three fit him much better. While he is a little bit lower to the round because of his height, it does benefit him in terms of a lot of his back pedal. He's a very compact mover, makes not a lot of false steps, not a lot of overcommitting, and he's able to transition pretty well. Now, I don't think his hip flips are incredible in terms of going back and forth, which could give him issues in man coverage, just strictly playing slot, because that transition happened about, 2017? I think that transition really, or maybe it was 28. It might have been 2018 that transition got fully into play, where it was like, okay, now you're a safety. We saw it at the end of 2017 season, but then moving forward is like, okay, now you're a safety. But the compact movement helps him a ton. He's a pretty good athlete. He definitely has a lot of strength to his game. He plays with a lot of strength in his game. A couple more issues with athleticism. I guess you could throw in his length is not fantastic, and that can give him issues in certain responsibilities defensively. And I don't think he's the most explosive player, even seeing that coming out of his combine with some of his scores. I don't think he's the most explosive, but his change of direction is usually pretty smooth because of how low to the ground I believe that he is. I think he's definitely athletic enough to play in, let's say, the Lions defense next season. I'm not really concerned about that. It's actually more to the size, I would say, maybe than anything, the fact that he's 5'9". He has the weight, he's just 5'9". You have to keep that in mind. So this is where the first concern comes in, and it is man coverage. See, when I look at the Lions defense and I look at their secondary, and you look at what the Lions had last season, talking about Tracy Walker, what he's good and what he's not good at, I think it's clear the Lions want guys that are versatile. Even Aubrey Pleasant said, you need guys that are very versatile, because what they ask of their safeties is a lot. All right, because they're going to show a lot of split coverage shell pre-snap. But then there's the versatility side, where based on the side of the football, you may have to come down and play man coverage. You may have to come down a little bit and play some zone. You may have to come down and make a tackle, or you may have to be able to do drop deep. You need a ton of versatility to play in this defense, but at the same time, you're not going to be pigeonholed into one role, at least based on the personnel that we have. Now, when you think a team like the Saints, we did the Marcus Williams video, and we talked about how Marcus Williams is mainly the deep free safety in that defense, but the difference is they have a guy named Malcolm Jenkins who thrives in the box. Lions don't really have that. They don't have a guy that's built for box play, and we saw that with T. Walk and Will. We tried it, didn't work. Now back to split coverage, they're much more successful. We don't have a guy currently on the roster that's built for that, even assuming Tracy Walker comes back to be your pure box guy. Jamal Adams, he's a box guy. So it allowed Quandre Diggs to just play the deep safety role, and they played off each other really well. Marcus Williams had Malcolm Jenkins. He's a box guy. Plays in the box well, and he can line up a man coverage because he's also a former cornerback. Lions don't really have that. And I'm going to assume if Tracy Walker does come back, you're going to need a guy that has the versatility to be able to do a lot of different things, because you don't want to have Tracy Walker become the box guy. You can prefer things over other things, like, hey, I prefer you to be in man coverage. And we even saw that like on some of the film, going back to like 2019 film, right? The Detroit Lions, when they had Tracy Walker, Diggs on the field at the same time, they were trying to get Tracy Walker in those man coverage assignments pre-snap rather than Quandre Diggs if it was man coverage, which also kind of gives it away a little bit, because they knew that's not where they wanted Diggs, because certain matchups did not match up well. So when you talk about man coverage, there's some issues here, but there's also some to like. I will say that. Biggest issue first off being size, and this gets him in trouble with certain matchups, tight ends. Now this is a spot where we've seen both of our safeties play in the past. Tracy Walker, you put a lot of work into this last offseason. I'm going to assume they're going to continue to work with his man coverage side of things, because that's where they want to help him improve so they can utilize that versatility. But tight end matchups are an issue. Now we saw Tracy do it. He has some size. For Quandre Diggs, this is not a spot you want him in. Now maybe if he's playing far off coverage, it could be okay. But just because of build alone here, this is not a matchup that you want Quandre Diggs in. So teams like Seattle, they kept him out of these matchups pretty much all the way. I mean, when you look at his snap counts last season specifically, the guy played 1,078 snaps at free safety, 86 snaps in the box. Compare that to a guy like Tracy Walker, who played about 50-50 to all different positions. He didn't play really ever in a slot either, even though he has a background of a slot corner. They kept him back. They kept him in the back end to try to play to his strengths and kind of hide some of his limitations, which is, good coaching. Playing off coverage is much better than him playing tight coverage, lining up pre-snap, getting up on someone man-to-man. I think playing off coverage and man-to-man coverage is much better for him because he can read the route and react to it, and he loves to come down and hit. So you have that ability, and he has good ball skills. So I think that helps him, because either he's going to pick it off or he's going to knock it loose. But getting him to play up in tight man coverage is not beneficial. So the good thing is I think the Lions do ask their guys to play a lot of off coverage. Even when they blitz, they'll bring linebackers and they'll ask Tracy Walker to pick up man coverage, but he'll still be playing off so he can kind of wait on the route a little bit more. That would be the benefit that would help him, but still you don't love him in tight end matchups. So there would have to be, let's say Tracy Walker and Diggs are here, there would have to be that focus to try to make sure that you get Tracy Walker on those matchups more often than the other guy. Now, I guess if the Lions didn't bring back Tracy Walker and they brought back, and they brought in like a Jalen Petrie and they signed Quandre Diggs, well, that changes things up, because then you're playing to both guys' strengths. But he can get some man coverage assignments as well, even if he is playing tight, and mainly that comes with running backs. Guys out the backfield, he can do that. He does have enough speed to keep up. Usually those guys aren't running very complex routes. If anything, it's like one cut, so there's not a ton to it. He can hang with those guys, and they're about usually pretty similar in size, so there's not a big size disadvantage there. Running backs he's fine with, maybe like scat backs, little gadget players. He could line up man there. It's just not your preference. The Lions did run a lot of cover 3 out of their 2-shell looks even. Where Aaron Glenn is coming from and what we saw him do last season on third down also stands out, because on third down, what he did a lot of the time, and if you can get more pressure, this can help. But I also just think it's part of the style that Aaron Glenn's coming from. He's an aggressive defense coordinator, like Dan Campbell as head coach. They're going to play aggressive. And one spot that he's coming from, which is New Orleans, who does the same thing, on third down, they like to go cover 0. They like to man up across the board. They don't do it every time, but they'll man up across the board and play man coverage. That's also a spot where you have to wonder a little bit about Diggs. Yeah, if he's matched up on a running back, he'd probably be fine in off coverage. But you don't want to line him up in tight coverage on a guy. He does have the background of playing slot corner, so there is that side of it. You would just have to be very matchup aware. You have to be very matchup aware of what position am I putting him, who am I lining him up with. If I line him up on a tight end, this is not good, because that's probably where the ball is going. If I get him on a smaller receiver, we may have a chance him playing off coverage and playing on the sticks and working from there. But that's something you're going to be very, very aware of. Plus, you got to keep in mind that this is an area Tracy Walker is still improving big time. He's not great here yet. He's still improving. I saw him put extra work in this past offseason coming into the year. They knew this is going to be very important from him. This is an area he's also has to improve upon. So there also is that side of it. DeMarlo wasn't great here, but they would give him responsibilities in different coverage assignments. If you're going cover 0, you're just playing man across the board and everybody else is blitzing. There are no deep safeties. There are no safeties back, so he can't play that role. The lowest grade I'll give him, because they just usually don't put him in that spot, and he's been his best not being put in that spot. That moves you to zone coverage. Now, zone coverage a little bit different here. As we said, Seattle plays a lot of cover 3, and he is fantastic as a zone coverage player, if you ask me. Now, we have a section for instincts, run, pass, things like that, but I think it all kind of ties together, so let's just dive into it now. One thing about the safety position, we know it's all about watching film, the IQ, understanding what's coming. And for Diggs, he's still kind of early in this process. But you look at this quote, knowing that, Darrell Bevel, who's working with the Jaguars, they've been on the other side, they see me at practice, how aggressive I am. And what Diggs has talked about is that he's kind of pulling it back a little bit for the 2021 season, understanding I have to be a little more patient in the back end. This is where he's improved so much. He only gave up 1 touchdown last season, and you see film like this. So this first clip we're going to take a look at is against the LA Rams. Now this is the 2020 season in playing safety. All right, you see him in the top right on this play. Now what he's talking about is plays like this. You see how he sits on that fake, that run fake a little bit too much and has his eyes down on this underneath dig route. Because of that, by the time he's looking around to try to find where Cooper Kupp is, he can't find him. And it leads to this huge play because he's just a little bit too aggressive and not immediately dropping back like he should in this zone. But you can see the improvement, and that's what it's all about as a safety. So again, not the same exact coverage defensively, but this is the play that he brought up specifically. This was an interception the next season against the Jags. Darrell Bevel's the OC now. He's, played with him in practice. So you see him in the deep middle here. Now this is going to be man coverage versus the last one that was zone coverage. So this is one of those single high, deep cover one looks that we were talking about. They don't do a ton, but they have to mix in different coverage. And that's what you see on this play. So again, they go with the play fake. Now it's a different play fake. It's not the exact same play design, but you get the play fake. But notice how Quandre Diggs on this play doesn't bite, doesn't sit underneath. He immediately gets depth. So when they go to this route, which he was already prepared for because he saw it on film and they attacked him a different way earlier, and they knew that they put this speed guy in the slot to try to give him a two-way go. Yeah, he might suck up, and then all of a sudden you get this big play. But Diggs gets depth, and you could see here because of that, he's able to undercut this route, which is, not a very good thrown ball by Trevor Lawrence, but it gives him an opportunity to get depth, undercut this route, come up with an interception, and create this play. These are the plays that are created in the film room by seeing these things and just improving. And this is exciting because he hasn't played safety that long. Like he said, he's only played for 4 seasons. So you see the improvement here. He goes and makes his play. Didn't throw him right to him, but you see the adjustment from year to year, how he stepped up understanding the position. Now, this is sort of another example of this same thing, okay? Same game against Jacksonville Jaguars. You can see number 6, the safety position on the bottom of the screen here. Now, this one, he doesn't get an interception, but he basically forces Lawrence not to throw it. Now, maybe he had an opportunity to, but he didn't. So they dropped to cover 3. And this is a very tough cover 3 beater, as you will see, because the cornerback, if he's going to stick with this route, all of a sudden you have a wide open two-way go versus the safety who's playing deep middle. But if he drops it off, then the dig route's going to be wide open. So this cornerback's going to stick with this deep dig, but because Diggs got depth, notice Trevor Lawrence on this play decides to pull back, okay, because now he has an opportunity to flip his hips, which is not the cleanest, but he can flip his hips, get in position where Lawrence is going to have to pull this down, cornerback takes the dig, and now the route's not there. Now, I found this play on Twitter, but I loved it. We talk about this cover 3, so you get kind of a cover 3 pre-snap look, but watch this play from Diggs. So he's in the deep middle. This is going to turn into basically like a inverted cover 2 or maybe even a Tampa 2 inverted here as he's going to slide down and 2 guys are going to drop out to play what would be like the deep safety role, the split coverage safety role in this play. This is something that Diggs does at a very high level is read quarterback's eyes, play off the slightest movements to get himself in position to make a play, but also not overcommit himself based off those slight movements, which would take him out of place. So watch this play. I mean, this is really a thing of beauty here from the safety position. So you can see the 2 defensive backs are now moving back to take kind of that split coverage role. And then Diggs, post-snap, is going to start to slide down to this box. See how he starts to slide down into this box? Now watch him read the quarterback's eyes. Once he comes off of that, he knows, okay, his second read is back to the middle of the field, right? He's trying to open that up. So he comes back to the middle of the field, and Diggs is sitting there waiting for it in where his zone responsibility was. Right? But this is something you see the quarterbacks do all the time. They read one way, trying to pull the defense that way, come back to the middle where the hole is. But because of all this movement in the defense, all this post-snap movement, doesn't even realize Diggs is going to be sitting there because this would usually be something in a cover 3 that could be open with his eyes. He's a very good cover 3 player, and he has been outstanding, which has led to the plays that he's been able to make in the back end. There was a couple little things that you could probably nitpick about this. First thing being that he can be a little bit too focused sometimes on quarterback's eyes, and it can at times cause him to sort of lose where the route is. But for the most part, he's a very heady safety. That's about it. And usually that was because the team would run a cover 3 beater and they'd be in that defense. And that was probably going to be open anyway. But he's a little bit too focused on the quarterback size. He likes playing that aggressive style where he can come down and make a play on the football. And what you notice is he not only reads the quarterback size, he usually has a pretty good feel of where routes are. He moves well with it. The slightest movement from a quarterback can set him off. And that can lead to some big plays for him. Just the slightest of a quarterback tapping on the foot, patting on a football to kind of give you that, oh, he's going to let it fly. He can jump on that and make a play based off of that. But what works so well is that he's able to take that and also add to it the fact that he doesn't overbite on these plays. He'll overcommit on those small movements, right? So pump fakes aren't going to completely bite him because while he'll give you a little bit of inch towards that, he has that recovery ability because he's very good balance. Again, I think being low to the ground helps him here, and he doesn't overcommit when he's playing like that. But he can force sometimes quarterbacks on a second and third reads because he'll slide to where their eyes are, and as soon as that route crosses face, he'll usually jump on it. If they're in man coverage defensively and they're running double slants, quarterback's looking that down, he'll get on that receiver and he'll end up just turning it into double coverage at that point, and the quarterback has to get off and look for another read. I love this part about his zone coverage is that if a play breaks down, if a guy's in his zone and a play breaks down, yeah, he has his eyes on the quarterback and trying to see man at the same time. But if it breaks down, he'll turn and lock on and turn that thing into man coverage that way. Because when play breaks down, there is no, hey, this is where the route's supposed to be. This is my zone. It's just everything's broken down at this point. So now you got to find a man to lock up. And he does this at a good level because he can turn, lock up, and say, okay, hold up, I got this guy. This guy's not going to break free. That sticks out too. Very good zone player. Cover 2 has the ability to do it. Can easily play a split coverage look. We know he doesn't have the fantastic range, so this works perfectly fine with him to play in this sort of defense. I definitely think, though, he thrives much more playing in the third level than the second level defensively. I think that's where he's good at. He can play in the second level. We saw it a little bit in the past with the Lions, but mainly playing that third level is where he thrives. And again, the biggest thing here is he just doesn't have that elite range. This could have been another part of the reason why the trade was made, not even just because of the range, but also the fact that, when you look at a guy like Diggs, he was so young into this transition where they could have looked at Diggs and said, hey, look, maybe he could be a deep safety for the Lions when Patricia was here. Also, so young, we talk about the missed tackles. We talk about being a little bit more on the aggressive side. He wasn't always trustworthy in the back end where he gave him more touchdowns. Versus you think about as the years go by, we just looked at some of his clips, the improvement that he has made. Oh my gosh, I mean, it's leaps. So you have to ask yourself, okay, well, hold up. How high can this guy's ceiling really get? Playing very smart football right now. He's playing at his highest level that he's played at this role. It's very exciting, but it also kind of goes back to the trade of, it was very young. Like he said, he's only really played safety for like 4 years. He's still kind of new to this. He's just 29 years old because he was a nickel coming out of college. So this is still new to him. But when you talk about the improvements, the discipline, the football IQ, the film time that he's putting into this, his hip flips aren't always the most clean, but he just has to set himself up earlier to avoid having that be a very big factor. Same thing with range, right? You have to be on top of plays, right? You have to put yourself in a good position. If you slide down and bite on a play fake and you already don't have incredible recovery speed, you're not going to be in a great spot because now you're looking for things and you can't find it. For him, the improvements have been massive, and I got to believe he could just keep getting better, especially if he stays in a similar defense. Instincts, and this kind of ties all into it, instincts as a player. And this is where I think we really saw him thrive early in that transition from cornerback to safety because instinctually, he's a very smart player. And he does have that kind of aggressive side to him that wants to make plays, but yet instinctually he's a very smart player. First off, he doesn't bite on play action. Sometimes his first step is even backwards. There is not that bite when it comes to play action, which is huge. He's not going to get fooled on that very often, which leads me to believe that trick plays are not going to fool him very often either. He can kind of anticipate some routes. This is one of his biggest strengths as a player, and it's the reason that he has the production that he has. Now, I think, sure, there's a right system for this. All right, there is. But zone coverage, using his eyes, being able to anticipate routes, playing the cornerback position in the past, and with the the non-fear that he plays with to come down and lay you out, make a play on the football, it kind of all comes together. Defense like the Lions last season that did play a lot of cover 3. We played a lot of cover 3 defensively, and I think that was because of a lot of our cornerbacks. That's what they're built for. They're physical at the line. They can run. Those guys like cover 3. We played a lot of it last season, being able to drop him back, which would ultimately lead to Tracy Walker dropping more depending on how you set it up. So you do have to keep that side in mind. Moves you on to ball skills. Some of the best ball skills. He had a lot of interceptions coming out of college. I believe it was 11 career. His final year, he had 3 interceptions coming out. And with the Seattle Seahawks, has been outstanding. 20 passes defended with Seattle, 13 interceptions with Seattle. The time that he's been there is about 2.5 years. That's the numbers that he's been putting up. You think about ball skills, you just think about interceptions, but it's more than that with him. Because if it's not an interception, he's usually going to try to separate you from the football. Receivers hate this because you're going to get smacked. But at the same time, he does this in a clean way where he's usually not drawing penalties. So he times it up. He anticipates routes. He's going to lay the boom because he is one of the most willing hitters, if you remember, from Quandre Diggs. And at the same time, usually makes you pay if you throw it his direction. And it's because of that flow with the football. We saw the one against the Rams where he kind of just flows with the football, gets himself in position and picks it off. Locking on the quarterback can get him a little off sometimes. There's one against the Titans. There's also one against, Stafford and the Rams where he's really locked on the quarterback's eyes. And, if quarterback looks you off, now this is, you don't see this from every quarterback, looks you off like this, it can kind of move you. Now, gosh dang, I don't know. The amount of no-look passes Stafford threw last year was ridiculous. It's got to be a scheme thing because every screen was a no-look. This pass is what is this? What does this say he's supposed to do here? So there is that side of it, but that's the one thing I would say is he could do a little bit better on sometimes being aware of some of the routes that are there, especially as the last line of defense. You can't let anything get behind you. Usually he's pretty darn good at that, though. Usually he's the deepest of the deepest, so I got to throw that out there. He just has that playmaking back end, and there's always going to be a little bit of risk behind that, but usually it works out in his favor, so there is that side of it. So the only really lack here is the length. Especially in certain roles. But if he's coming downhill and working on plays, he's a problem. If you have him in man coverage, now it might be a little bit less effective because he doesn't have the length or the size. So certain matchups, like let's say a tight end, ball skills probably won't show off. But it's about the instincts, putting himself in position, closing, and either separating from the ball or finishing the play with an interception. And after the catch, he actually is pretty dangerous as well after he picks it off. And then finally, it's the run tackling, it's the run defending. This is very interesting because, again, when you talk about scheme fit, here's where he has a knock. You can't really put him in the box. Teams don't like putting him in the box. Seattle really never did it. You don't like having this guy in the box. You can do it a few times, but you really want to protect him. You can't slide him in here and ask him to take on blocks. Has a very difficult time avoiding blocks. His best move against the run is playing from the deep spot, working his way downhill, seeing the run, taking an angle, and lighting the running back up. But putting him in the box is a very big cause for concern because he doesn't have really the build to hold up there, and he has struggled to get off blocks. But as a run defender, he's fun to watch. He is a big hitter. I don't know how to say it other than clips. He just lays people out. He will absolutely hit guys, and you got to love that. He's a hammer of a hitter. And I think he's also improved in terms of breaking down. When he gets in front of the back, he breaks himself down. He has way less missed tackles than he did back with the Lions when the trade went down. So he's been much more disciplined there. I think it's part of just understanding his role. I can't let guys pass me. But there are some issues still with this because he has that aggressive mindset. One thing that does pop up as a concern is that he can get a little bit over-aggressive with his pursuit angles. Rather than kind of just sliding himself in position like a Duron Harmon would and kind of get over top of it and just be there in case someone hits, he wants to make the play. That's why he's got 94 combined tackles and at least do a lot of awesome plays. But he can over-pursuit that angle, line himself up with a back that's 10 plus yards behind, away from Diggs. So because of that angle that he takes to directly put himself in front of him, now a cutback, he's susceptible to it. He's susceptible to that quick move to change field and flip around, and all of a sudden Diggs can kind of pull himself out of the play and kind of gets himself worked within the mess. Doesn't happen a ton, but it can happen, and it can lead to bigger plays. And again, you're the deep guy, so you don't want that to happen, but you kind of have to live with it, right? You have to live with it based on the style that he's going to play because he's also going to make some big plays. And again, he has missed way less tackles than he did in the past. Overall, Quandre Diggs is still as fun to watch, if not more fun to watch now than he was with the Lions. I enjoy watching this guy. I've always enjoyed watching this guy. And with the thing with Quandre Diggs is, does he fit the Lions? That will be something the Lions have to decide because, again, I think based on what we saw last year, it's not a perfect fit. He's a great coverage guy, but with if Tracy Walker's back, those two guys, I don't think they would necessarily mesh perfectly together based on what the Lions did last year. Tracy Walker, he's not built to play a constant box role. I don't want to put him in that spot. With the versatility they ask of their guys, there's a little bit less. I think what you see with Diggs is he's really good at a couple things, and if you put him in those spots like Seattle has, he's outstanding. But there are limitations. There are things that he struggles with. I think in a perfect world, there is a way to actually argue that Quandre Diggs could maybe make more sense than a guy like Marcus Williams. And this is also because of the price point. Okay, if you're running something similarly like you did last year, continuing to play cover 3, he's obviously going to fit into that well. We know he can play a split coverage look defensively. Then you also throw in the fact that he is a much better run defender than Marcus Williams, okay? I know what the stats say, but the film says something different. All right, Marcus Williams, who is a pretty good player in the back end and not giving up the big play, he is not a hitter like Quandre Diggs. Plus, he has some very ugly missed tackles where he's just like this. There is that as well. Diggs has shown us, obviously, he's a very big playmaker in the back end. And even Marcus Williams doesn't get many man coverage reps. They keep him out of it. That's Malcolm Jenkins' role. So there's that side of it too. Jenkins has a better build, and he also has that connection with Aaron Glenn in the past. We know this, but his price is also going to be much higher. We believe this. However, he is much younger. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but you could definitely say this could work. The biggest thing being the man coverage versatility and also the ability to play in the box, which the safety from the New Orleans Saints did not really do either. He didn't really play in the box either. So there is that side of it. The man coverage is a big thing, especially on pass downs. I know he has the background of playing slot, so I think there's certain matchups. It's just going to be very matchup reliant. If the Lions feel like they can make it work, because I think there's certain things they can with man coverage, you're just going to be very aware of it. Off coverage would help. There is a guy that can tackle you. You just can't really slide him in the box that often. It kind of takes away from versatility. I'm assuming T-Walks can be back. Again, if they go completely different and they get Diggs, and let's say they got a guy like Diggs and they drafted like a Jalen Peacher or someone that kind of lives in the box, well, now things are a little bit different. I've seen Tracy Walker pick up running backs on plays. All right, he is outstanding. He is turning into a pretty darn well-rounded player that just needs some more improvement in his man coverage and a little bit in zone coverage to be more of a ball hawk, and he's going to be one of the more complete safeties in the National Football League. It's why I believe you got to bring that guy back. Diggs just has some limitations, and who knows if you can really improve upon those. And at this point, I feel like he just kind of is what he is, and he's a great player in the right defense. So there just is that. Would I like to have him back? I would love to have Quandre Diggs back. There just is that to keep in mind with Quandre Diggs. And I think right now he's thriving in that system. So for me, him going back to Seattle, going to a system like that plays a very similar style. And a lot of teams are playing a lot of deep shell looks now, but if he goes to the same style, he'll probably be even better. But I think you can make it work with the talent like this. You want to adjust to your talent. You really do. You want to play to your talent. But I believe Tracy Walker is going to be back and part of this. And I think they look at Tracy Walker as a guy that could be a ball hawk in the back end. I think there's just not enough versatility here for this to be an ideal fit. But the talent is obvious, and he would help you in pass coverage without a question. He would be a ball hawk that you don't really have until Tracy Walker becomes that. But until then, we don't know if he's going to be that. Projected to get a 3-year, $30 million deal. I think it's a pretty fair price range for him, somewhere around there because he's 29 years old. 3 years is probably the max a team would like to lock him up for. I don't think his game, though, is based off athleticism, so there is that, which I think benefits him. I think it's just based off of instincts, which has allowed him to be so successful. And I think he can definitely play with enough speed right now to fit the kind of defense that he does. So Quandre Diggs, I don't think there's anything wrong with a 3-year deal. 3 or $10 million sounds like a very fair price for him because of the production that he's had recently. And yeah, I'd be very cool with bringing him back. No issues with it. Do I predict they will? I'm going to say no. But would I be mad at a homecoming, a reunion with this guy? Absolutely not. I love me some Quandre Diggs. That's just simple as it is. Simple as it is, I love some Quandre Diggs. Okay, I do. I just don't know how well it meshes. So I'm going to leave that out there. Let me know the thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the Lions, would you sign a guy like Quandre Diggs? Thank you, Pride, for watching, and I'm out.